Ferda is handed a sudden marriage arrangement to the Grand Duchess Valdrova, a decision delivered coldly by his father. For a noble, this marriage is a death sentence, offering only banishment or a brutal end by the dragon. As the frail son of a concubine, Ferda endured years of grueling training and mocking whispers, desperately seeking family acceptance. He pushed himself to the limit under his father's distant, watchful gaze, hoping to finally be acknowledged. But his efforts only brought defeat at the hands of those who claimed he never had the right to train. Left crying on the cold ground, Ferda watched his tormentors leave while his father turned his back in silence. Faced with the fatal engagement, Ferda chooses banishment instead, standing before the silent lord to declare he will leave. Cast out and stripped of his family name, Ferda walks away from the gates with his trembling hands empty. Clenching his fist, a dark resolve ignites within him as magic begins to swirl, fueling a vow never to forgive. Driven by a burning need to make his father regret casting him out, Ferda left his home behind. He began his path as a mage later than most, facing constant ridicule and abuse from those who mocked his late start. But as the torment pushed him to his limits, a dark foreign mana erupted from his resentment. Driven purely by hatred, he unlocked a power that left his abusers broken on the ground. Years later, Ferda returned to the Rosnova estate as a powerful archmage. He turned his family's pride into a nightmare, turning the servants against one another and destroying his brothers. Finally, Ferda forced his broken father to watch the total ruin of the house he had built, leaving nothing but ashes and silence in his wake. Yet even with his family gone, Ferda's internal fury remained unquenched. As his power grew, he became an enemy to the entire continent, facing down armies sent to judge him. Surpassing every opponent, he rose to the 8th circle of magic, but to protect himself from endless resentment, he sought the ultimate realm of a demigod, the 9th circle. Ferda discovers the 9th circle requires a dragon's heart. Cruelly, the target is Grand Duchess Valdrova, the fiancé whose arrangement destroyed his life. Confronting the beast, Ferda prepares to fight, but Valdrova is stunned to recognize her former fiancé, questioning why he wants her dead. Coughing blood, Ferda demands that the tyrant dragon die quietly so he can claim the power he needs. Valdrova is confused. Living isolated, she cannot understand what grudge could drive him to such deep hatred. Ferda points in rage, blaming the dragon's desire for a human mate for his family casting him out. As he screams that her greed ruined him, the massive dragon merely flinches. Shaking off his confusion, Ferda focuses on gathering his remaining mana for a final blow. The dragon rises, claiming she finally understands, and swings her claw. Ferda frantically raises a magic barrier. Instead, the dragon pierces her own chest. As blood splatters, she asks if he truly needs her heart. Terrified she will ruin the heart, Ferda screams for her to stop and lunges to seize his final prize. With a deafening crack, the red dragon collapses, willingly offering up the one thing Ferda needs to reach the 9th circle. Fearing the essence would be destroyed, Ferda rushes forward, only to find the massive glowing heart resting safely in her claws. Stunned by her surrender, he demands to know why. Valdrova softly admits she did it because her existence brought him nothing but misery. She shares a lifetime of isolation, confessing how much she hated the destructive instincts of her blood and the terror she caused. Believing her death is the only way to make amends, she gently offers her heart, hoping it will bring him happiness. Ferda is gripped by a sudden, frustrating unease. He clutches his chest, angry that her sacrifice is shaking his resolve at the very end. Steeling himself, he lifts the radiant heart high, absorbing the ancient dragon's power to finally transcend his human limits. As the dragon's heart dissolves, Ferda is pulled into a dark abyss, surrounded by the echoes of Valdrova's presence. In the quiet void, her final emotions pierce his mind, forcing him to witness the sheer scale of her ancient loneliness. Overwhelmed by her sorrow, Ferda begins to weep, realizing how insignificant his own burning hatred truly was. Confronted by the ghost of his past, he remembers the simple dream of his childhood. He did not crave absolute power, but a warm family. He wonders if the dragon shared that same lonely wish. But looking down at her lifeless body, he knows it is already too late for regrets. Determined to undo his mistake, Ferda casts the ninth circle magic wish, sacrificing his life to reset time. Suddenly, Ferda opens his eyes to find himself back in his father's sunlit study. He realizes he has been sent back in time to the very day his engagement to Valdrova was first decided. His father expects him to refuse the cold arrangement, but having returned to the past, Ferda stands tall and formally accepts the dragon's hand. Huron Rosnova learns his brother Ferda has accepted the engagement to the terrifying Grand Duchess Valdrova. Amused and scheming, he decides to pay Ferda a visit before his departure. Anticipating a scene of tears and despair, Huron bursts into the room, only to stand frozen. Ferda is calmly preparing himself in front of the mirror, completely unfazed. Confronted by his brother, Ferda asks if it is proper to barge in without knocking. Huron is stunned to see him dressing himself, but Ferda simply notes he must get used to it. Huron warns that this engagement is a death sentence, but Ferda already knows the dark history. The Grand Duchess's first fiancé, the Empire's perfect third prince, met a brutal fate. That prince had turned down the throne to claim the title of the tyrant dragon's fiancé, only to return from the meeting beaten to a pulp. The warning is clear. The dragon's wrath is merciless, and walking into her jaws is pure suicide. Huron mockingly tells Ferda that nobody will stop an idiot, but warns him not to run away, threatening to execute Ferda himself if he tries to escape his fate. Unmoved, Ferda retaliates with a sharp truth, warning Huron to worry about his own scandalous gaze toward their eldest brother's wife. As a furious Huron is held back, Ferda bids him farewell with a calm smirk, ready to face the dragon. As Ferda prepares to leave the Rosnova estate, the family butler sheds theatrical tears. He claims it has been an absolute honor to serve the young master all these years. But Ferda sees right through the act. He remembers how this very servant poisoned his food since childhood, making him believe he was simply born frail. Instead of retaliating, Ferda offers a chillingly calm farewell. Leaving the stunned butler behind, he sets off toward his perilous destination. Inside the carriage, Ferda reflects on his quiet heart. Having already achieved his vengeance once, he finds a strange peace in the silence. He recalls the addictive, drug-like nature of his past magic, which once drove him to the brink of uncontrollable madness. But that destructive life is behind him. For now, he is content to simply rest in the quiet moments he hasn't felt in ages. The carriage soon arrives at the forbidden boundary of the Grand Duchess's domain, where the terrified driver immediately flees, leaving Ferda completely on his own. As Ferda waits by his suitcase, pondering whether he should learn a bit of basic magic to survive, a figure quietly approaches through the dense trees. A white-haired maid named Luri introduces herself as an attendant of Lady Valdrova. With a polite bow, she offers to escort Ferda up to the towering castle. The history of the Arkan Empire is built on a fragile peace, bordered by the dangerous land of demons. It was none other than the Crimson Dragon, Valdrova, who held the monsters back from destroying human land. As Ferda follows Luri through the woods, he contemplates the unfair reputation of his future bride. When wild beasts growl in the shadows, the maid swiftly drives them away with a display of force. Luri assures him of his safety, but mentions that flying to the castle alone would only take 10 seconds. That is when Ferda realizes his escort is no ordinary maid. Recognizing her supernatural attributes, Ferda realizes she is a high-ranking dragon spawn, possessing innate magic along with hidden horns and a tail. Feeling completely exhausted, he asks if they can fly the rest of the way. Luri bluntly refuses to carry him, leaving the weak nobleman to struggle on foot without even a short rest. By sunset, they finally reach the towering gates of the castle. Luri knocks, announcing the fiancé's arrival. Trembling from the intense aura radiating from behind the door, Ferda is stopped from entering. Luri coldly explains he lacks the right to face the Grand Duchess directly. Instead, Luri delivers a stern message from the Grand Duchess. While she commends Ferda's courage, She demands that he return to where he came from. Ferda is stunned to be turned away at the gates. However, he is no longer his past self. This time, he chooses to stand here of his own free will, refusing to abandon the engagement. Luri glares and dumps a massive sack of gold at his feet, offering him wealth to simply disappear and establish a new life elsewhere. But Ferda has no interest in riches. He boldly declares that his only interest is the Grand Duchess herself. Annoyed by his persistence, Luri threatens him, admitting that sending him away is her own decision to protect her mistress from greedy mortals. Releasing her terrifying dragon fear, Luri pins Ferda down. She compares him to the arrogant third prince, who sought to exploit the Grand Duchess for his own ambition. Pointing out how the prince's greed was easily seen through, Luri demands to know if Ferda wishes to suffer the same fatal end. Instead of cowering, Ferda smirks. He swears without falsehood that he came of his own accord, seeking absolutely no benefit. Remembering how she once selflessly gave him her heart in a past life, he vows to stand by her side as her true ally this time. The human visitor boldly declares his intent to become Valdrova's fiancé, demanding direct communication. Angered by this insolence, the maid lunges with deadly claws, yet she halts her strike when he remains unfazed, choosing instead to politely excuse herself. Using a magic light, the maid relays the human's daring proposal to her mistress. Deep within the cavern, the Grand Crimson Dragon listens to the report. Intrigued by this unusual audacity, Valdrova wonders what kind of man he is. Her maid initially dismisses him as a feeble mortal who should be disposed of immediately. Sighing, the maid admits a visitor is strange. Despite unleashing her terrifying draconic aura, the human did not show a shred of fear, proving he might actually be able to look the Duchess in the eye. A rare amusement stirs within Valdrova. Knowing a human can meet her gaze gives her hope that she might finally be able to interact with someone normally. Though the maid is quieted by her mistress's reaction, she returns to the waiting visitor to announce that the engagement will proceed, catching him completely off guard. She guides him through the castle's grand corridors to a pristine guest bedroom. Surprised by the immaculate care of the room, he learns she manages the massive estate entirely on her own. Luri firmly sets the boundaries, emphasizing that until the ceremony, he is merely a guest. Her clear disdain for humans makes him realize she is acting like a protective guard dog. When he asks about the timeline, Luri reveals the ceremony will take place quietly in the dragon's lair in 1 month, watching his reaction closely. He muses that a month is enough time, but Luri quickly clarifies this period is a test to prove his worthiness to stand beside her grand mistress. Directly pointing at him, she demands he prove his qualification, leaving him to realize that gaining acceptance in this household will be no simple task. Though this trial is Luri's own initiative rather than the Duchess's, she refuses to let a weak partner humiliate her master, demanding he show his true potential. He respects Luri's fierce loyalty, yet a shadow of his past life lingers, making him wonder why someone so devoted was absent when Valdrova surrendered her heart. He asks if he must become an emperor, but Luri simply demands he command respect from other great beings. Accepting the challenge, he agrees with a faint smile. His relaxed demeanor only irritates her, leaving her to question his unshakable confidence as he reassures her that 1 month will be enough to convince her. As night falls over the castle, the visitor is left alone with his thoughts, knowing that despite his bold words, he currently has no magical abilities. In his past life, he reached the 9th circle using a path of pure hatred, a volatile magic that risks consuming a mage's sanity. Refusing to walk that dark path again, he chooses the slow, stable blue circle of meditation, hoping to build a foundation that won't waver. 1 week later, he struggles to form his first circle. Despite his past memories, his body repeatedly fails to manifest the blue mana. With 3 weeks left, Luri brings him meals while keeping a watchful, skeptical eye on his progress. He quietly eats, knowing he needs a new approach. Suddenly, a massive tremor shakes the castle. Luri explains that the Grand Duchess is personally sweeping monsters from the eastern edge. Intrigued, he demands to see the battle. Luri warns him that the sight of a dragon's raw power is too terrifying for any human mind to endure. Standing firm, he declares it his duty as her future partner to witness her power. Reluctantly, Luri takes flight, carrying him through the sky at dizzying speed. Struggling to recover from the dizzying flight, he kneels on the grass. The maid urges him to stand and face the valley, where the real battle awaits. Looking down, he witnesses a terrifying spectacle. Below them, massive monsters swarm the canyon, only to be consumed by a sudden, devastating burst of draconic fire. The Grand Duchess maneuvers effortlessly through the chaos, her massive claws and searing breath reducing the beasts to ash in seconds. From the skies, she unleashes her full fury, bathing the canyon in a sea of flames that sweeps the remaining horde away. Even from a distance, the sheer force of a dragon's roar hits him like a physical blow. The overwhelming pressure forces him to the ground, gasping for air. Luri looks down at his trembling form, asking if he finally understands the absurdity of his proposal. Before him lies the terrifying majesty of the one he wishes to claim as his partner. She warns him of the sheer absurdity of their union, showing the terrifying draconic form of his future partner. As he trembles on the ground, she watches closely, expecting his resolve to break under the weight of her true nature. She walks away, explaining the destructive urge that flows through a crimson dragon's blood. Humans and dragons can never truly be one, and she expects him to realize this truth before his fragile body breaks. But instead of cowering in fear, a soft smile spreads across his face. Whispering that she is magnificent, he leaves her utterly flustered and bewildered by his strange lack of terror. Back at the castle that night, he lies completely exhausted in bed. Though his body is a wreck from the overwhelming draconic pressure, he realizes she was the one who quietly carried him all the way home. Staring up at the sky, he reflects on the sheer terror of what he witnessed. Yet, despite the overwhelming danger, he couldn't bring himself to look away from her raw power. He realizes her fierce battles and hidden identity are all to protect what she loves, like a noble knight walking a path of hardship. To him, her hidden strength is nothing short of magnificent. But as he contemplates their bond, a sudden, burning surge of red mana erupts within his chest. It is a power he knows he must reject, desperately clawing at his chest to stop the flow. A single heavy drop of blood falls, triggering a strange watery vision of the armored knight standing before him in a sea of crimson. As he meditates, he reflects on his fiancée's strength, feeling his mana circuits clear. He focuses on a complex, unfamiliar emotion that is neither anger nor revenge, letting the red energy guide him. Sitting in a quiet state of focus, he visualizes the vague mana pool. He carefully draws the swirling red currents together, compressing the energy rapidly to form a singular magic circle. With a sudden spark, a red circle manifests above his palm. Clenching his fist, he resolves that this lifetime will be different, swearing not to repeat the tragic mistakes of his past. The next morning, the maid is completely stunned to learn he opened his circuits overnight. He simply explains that he is far from ordinary, leaving her utterly speechless. Although he has met the qualification standards, he knows he still has a long way to go. He politely asks if there is a place nearby where he can practice his magic. Within just half a day, she prepares a training field complete with wooden targets. He is thoroughly impressed by the speed and efficiency of the dragon's attendant. When she asks what he plans to practice, he explains his need to control mana efficiently. But to a dragon spawn who uses magic as naturally as breathing, his struggle seems strange and primitive. She nods in agreement, leaving him to quietly reflect on the vast difference between those born with natural gifts and humans who must rely on relentless effort. As he walks toward the targets, she asks to watch his training. He agrees, closing his eyes to focus on the absolute stability required for mana control. Unlike the traditional blue circle of stability, his red circle demands that he stir and control his emotions simultaneously. Overcoming this contradiction, he begins to recreate the mana bullet of his past. Within mere minutes, he effortlessly calls forth a concentrated sphere of red mana. The sight leaves the maid utterly stunned, unable to comprehend how a human could master his circuits without breaking a sweat. Manifesting 3 spheres at once, he aligns his energy and aims at the training targets. With absolute focus, he prepares to unleash the devastating mana shot from his previous life. The blast tears through the field, obliterating the target in a flash of heat. While he calmly notes that the volatile red energy didn't harm him, the maid's shock quickly turns into deep suspicion. Sensing something unnatural about his perfect control, the maid reports her findings to the dragon princess. Though the princess struggles to understand human magic, she asks for an honest assessment of her new fiancé. The maid warns that a human who makes no mistakes must be hiding something dangerous. Yet, the dragon princess only smiles, finding the maid's unusual level of concern proof of his truly astonishing nature. Vowing to place her trust in his pure intentions, the princess smiles warmly. But the maid remains protective, remembering how humans have hurt her lady in the past, and searches for a way to test his heart. The maid suggests entrusting him with a special trial to prove his worth. Dressed in formal attire, Ferda takes his first steps into the grand hall, ready to face whatever awaits him. Inside the grand assembly hall, the lords of the Eastern Front gather in confusion. Whispers ripple through the round table as they realize they have been summoned to meet the Grand Duchess's newly chosen fiancé. Lord Count Olvera dismisses the young newcomer as a powerless boy from the Rosnova family. He expects the Grand Duchess to tear the young man apart before long. But the heavy doors swing open, and Ferda Rosnova steps into the hall with a calm, unwavering gaze. Before this meeting, Ferda learned of the Grand Duchess's grand achievements, including her legendary slaying of the Black Dragon Godwin. As her future husband, he was tasked with managing the territory's internal affairs while she handles the monsters. Realizing he must assert himself to earn both her trust and the Lord's compliance, Ferda prepares to face the assembly. Standing before the round table, Ferda offers a chilling first greeting, asking the assembled lords how they would prefer to be treated. His cold demeanor immediately shifts the power dynamic in the room. The Count tries to reclaim control, claiming the lord's long-standing loyalty to the Empire demands respect. The others quickly mutter in agreement, hoping to put the young consort in his place. Unmoved, Ferda demands a direct answer to his question. Pressured by his intense gaze, the Count sweatily backs down, admitting it is indeed the consort's right to speak down to them. Ferda then remarks that they may continue governing their lands as they wish, whether through benevolence or exploitation. The mention of exploitation outrages one of the lords, but Ferda quickly offers a smooth, mocking apology. The angry lord snaps back with a biting insult, declaring he can see exactly why Ferda was abandoned by his own family. Enraged by the young newcomer's presence, the lord mocks Ferda's abandonment by a knightly family. He scoffs at his low rank, but Ferda remains entirely unfazed, coolly calling the lord's hard-earned fourth circle status merely average. The insult ignites the lord's fury, and he prepares to unleash his magic to teach the boy a lesson. Before a brawl can erupt, Ferda raises a calm hand, proposing they settle their dispute through a formal duel. Out in the arena, spectators whisper about the obvious outcome of a clash between a first circle and a fourth circle mage. Under a watchful eye, the two opponents stand opposite one another, the tension thick in the air. When Ferda asks what magic he will face, the lord sneers at the rude demand. Assuming the boy is simply terrified, he proudly boasts that he will unleash a destructive fourth-tier spell. As he gathers his mana, the crowd murmurs in concern, knowing the sheer destructive power of a magic blast. If the young consort is hit directly, he might not even survive the impact. Ferda remains completely unbothered, quietly admitting that his only spell is a basic mana shot. The confession draws a mocking laugh from his opponent, but Ferda simply smiles, confident he will not lose. Enraged by the boy's calm confidence, the lord pours intense killing intent into his spell. Ferda watches the massive magic circle take shape, analyzing the flow of red circle mana with absolute precision. With a pitying sigh, Ferda releases his own simple mana spheres. The match is already decided in his mind, leaving the Lord frozen in sudden disbelief as the basic spell races toward him. Expecting a direct hit, the Lord braces himself, only to realize Ferda wasn't aiming for him at all. Instead, the precise strikes hit the magic circle just before completion, shattering it into useless fragments. The display of impossible precision leaves the Lord trembling in terror. On his knees, he realizes that a supposedly weak first circle mage has completely stripped him of his power and pride. Kneeling on the cold floor, the defeated Lord struggles to accept his sudden loss. Ferda stands quietly before him, waiting for the formal surrender that will solidify his authority. Swallowing his pride, the Lord admits defeat, vowing to do whatever it takes to grow stronger. He bows deeply to the man he had ridiculed only moments before. As the spectators whisper in disbelief, the Grand Duchess's loyal maid silences a gossiping lord with a dark, warning glare. No one dares question the consort's victory anymore. Ferda offers a polite hand, commending the Lord's skill. But the warm moment quickly turns icy when the man introduces himself and mentions his past in the capital. Recognizing the name Thessalos Vulture, Ferda's expression grows dangerously cold. He remembers this man as a past benefactor, though his eyes hold only malice. Before the confused lord can comprehend the connection, Ferda raises a finger to his forehead. With a quiet single shot, he executes the man on the spot. As the assembly watches in sheer horror, Ferda stands over the lifeless body. He mutters that he cannot allow anyone to live who might bring harm to his fiancée. In the middle of the arena, a tense silence falls over the crowd. Ferda stands coldly over the lifeless body of a noble he just struck down, leaving the onlookers frozen in sheer disbelief. With blood still fresh on his cheek, Ferda turns to the horrified lords, casually telling them the man deserved to die. The nobles are left utterly baffled by his sudden, casual hostility. He cryptically claims Thessalos had to be eliminated to protect the future happiness of the Grand Duchess, dismissively walking away as the onlookers label him a complete madman. As the carriage rattles away from the Colosseum, the adrenaline fades, leaving Ferda clutching his head in agonizing pain from draining his mana so abruptly. Between the motion sickness of the bumpy ride and the exhaustion of his single mana shot, he barely has the strength to keep his composure. The maid dryly comments on his rash actions, warning him that killing one of the Grand Duchess's loyal subjects might ruin his upcoming engagement. Despite her warnings, Ferda remains relaxed. He is certain his preemptive strike was justified, knowing what kind of treason the Lord was already committing in secret. As the sun sets over the horizon, the carriage finally arrives at the gates of the late noble's imposing estate. Upon entering the castle, Ferda casually breaks the news of the master's death to the stunned butler, dropping a heavy-wrapped sack directly into his hands. The butler is ordered to hang the wrapped sack by the gates, but he is horrified to discover his master's severed head inside, sending a scream echoing through the quiet castle. Inside the late noble's bedroom, the maid warns Ferda about the consequences of his actions while they search for evidence of treason. Their search is cut short when Ferda locates a hidden door. Rather than wasting time searching for a mechanism to open the secret door, the maid tells Ferda to step aside and smashes straight through the floorboards with a single, powerful punch. With the passage now cleared, they descend the dark stone steps, guided only by the heavy, metallic stench of blood pooling in the chamber below. Covering their noses against the awful smell, they step into a hidden, blood-soaked laboratory, littered with the grotesque, tangled remains of both humans and monsters. The horrific experiments reveal Thessalos was a demon follower who was stitching dead soldier organs onto monsters, a blasphemous act that fills the maid with intense fury. While the maid agrees this treason justifies his execution, she wonders how Ferda knew of this secret room. Ferda remains silent, his eyes locked onto a document describing an infinite mana cultivation method. The secret records detail how to harness and refine the low-quality mana constantly produced by monsters, transforming it into a limitless supply of pure magic power. Thessalos hoped to use this technique to raise an undead army and destroy the nobles who demoted him, unaware that his secret ambitions had already been discovered. Staring at the pages, Ferda realizes this is the very same nameless cultivation method he created in his past life. He knows it holds the key to quickly regaining his former strength. With his past self's shadow looming over him, he contemplates the power within his grasp. Studying it could restore his status as an 8th circle mage in a fraction of the time. The maid assumes he will secretly steal the research to grow stronger, noting that even he cannot resist human temptation. But to her complete surprise, Ferda flatly refuses the opportunity. He hands the papers back and orders her to burn the laboratory down. When she questions his sanity, he explains that powerful magic is worthless if it ultimately brings sadness to the Grand Duchess. He is determined to tear his past mistakes out by the roots. Accepting the request, the maid prepares to erase the dangerous research once and for all. As blue flames consume the parchment, Ferda reflects on how spells carry the caster's emotions. Using Thessalos's magic would only infect him with the late noble's bitter hatred and anger, forces he must discard to move forward. Watching the fire, Ferda quietly notes how well it burns, his face softening with a faint smile. The maid watches him closely, still finding him unpredictable and entirely unsuited for her master. Sighing, she urges him to leave the musty laboratory behind. They must wash away the smell of blood and ashes, as the time for his engagement ceremony with the Grand Duchess has finally arrived.